India development debate. I'm Supriya Shrinate, and straight on to the news that we're putting the spotlight on. A day after India struck terror camps across the LOC, Pakistan's F-16 jets violated India's airspace in Jammu and Kashmir's Nowshera region to target military installations in our country. The Indian Air Force shot down a Pakistan aircraft in retaliatory firing, which crashed on its territory in the Lam Valley area along the line of control. Now, government officials have confirmed that a wing commander who engaged Pakistan's jets is in Pakistan's custody. Imran Khan, in a televised address to his country, advocated the need for a dialogue all over again. In India, Congress President Rahul Gandhi expressed a deep anguish over the blatant politicization of sacrifices via armed forces by the ruling party. He was a part of a 21-party opposition delegation that was briefed on the situation. Is a limited war imminent? What happens now to retaliatory action as far as India is concerned? How are we going to react to Pakistan? How serious is Imran Khan's offer to talk at all? And can anyone in their right mind take him seriously? That's exactly what we are looking to debate and discuss, besides the diplomatic coup of sorts that India seems to have found favors with the US, UK, Australia, France and many Gulf countries. This is the India development debate. Let me straight take it across to an excellent panel to discuss all of this and a lot more. Kamal Sibbal, former diplomat and former foreign secretary. Talmiz Ahmed, Indian diplomat, also joins us right here on the India development debate. Yogendra Narayan, former defense secretary and air marshal, retired VK Bhatia. We also have on the show Manu Pabbi, senior editor at the Economic Times, and Nirja Chaudhary will be joining us later as political commentator and columnist. So thank you very, very much, all of you, for being with us. And Mr. Sibbal, if I may begin with you, since last evening there have been heavy firing across the along the LOC by both sides. We then today had the Pakistan Air Force radars, in which was confronted by India. The plan was foiled. Both sides lost an aircraft, and one of our Indian Air Force personnel is in their custody. We'll talk about him in just a bit. But are we staring at the worst possible sequence of events as they are flowing, or is this largely along expected lines?
Well, it was not along expected lines at all, because India took an extremely bold step to hit at Pakistan proper, and hit at the main training camp of the jaish-e-mohammed. I think it took Pakistan by surprise. And in a sense, we also were taken by surprise, because we expected that India will restrain its response, would limit its response to POK, and not go beyond into Pakistan proper. So Pakistan has been given a very, very severe warning that if they continue to support terrorism against India, and if there are more Pulwama-like attacks, then India can attack anywhere in Pakistan. So Pakistan has to absorb this. Their planners have to take care of this. Jingoism aside, the pride of the Pakistani army aside, they have to take a very rational view of what their own vulnerabilities are, and what their capacities are, and what they should do not to provoke India into taking even stronger and more widespread action against Pakistan in the future. Now, the other thing that I like to say is that the fact that a MiG-21 Bison, upgraded though it is, could actually bring down an F-16 should teach a very powerful lesson to Pakistan. This is not a mainline aircraft of India. In fact, these MiG-21s are going to be phased out. And if a MiG-21 is good enough to bring down an F-16, and all the F-16 defenses, its flares and its jamming or whatever else, I'm not a technical person, it simply didn't work against the kind of technology that is there on this relatively low-grade aircraft. It shows how vulnerable the Pakistani Air Force is if it tries to actually enter into Indian airspace and get locked into battles with our more high-performing aircraft. So, if the Pakistani Air Force doesn't have any option, what option do they have on the ground? It's a very limited option. They can take some action on the line of control. They can't come deep into Indian territory. So we will absorb this, we'll deal with this.
Okay, we will indeed deal with this, but I'm going to take a quick question to Talmiz Ahmed before I go across to others on the panel. Mr. Ahmed, in response to India's preemptive non-military anti-terror measure, and India had very categorically stated all of this, Pak's Air Force has responded by targeting a military installation, and that's the word that's coming from India's Ministry of External Affairs, even of course though the attempts were foiled and they were unsuccessful. many people believe that was an irrational move, but do you believe Pak was really trying to assuage the domestic constituents? Imran Khan had to be seen to be acting because there is no reason why they would do something as irrational as this. They would come so ill-prepared. And like Mr. Sibal is pointing out there, you know, an aircraft from 1960s could actually bring down an F-16.
Yes, you're absolutely right. There were deep concerns within the domestic constituencies about the very poor performance of the Pakistani armed forces. In fact, the principal concern was within the armed forces themselves. They have asserted a right to control and rule their country on the basis that they are the guardians of their nationhood and the welfare of their people. And now when there is a first challenge that they face, they are found completely asleep. And therefore, yes, they had to do something to show that they are alive and kicking, and that they had to escalate matters. From our side, we were very clear that our war was against terrorism and against terrorists. It was not a war against the Pakistani armed forces, and it is not a war against the people of Pakistan. But the Pakistani armed forces do not distinguish between terrorists and themselves. Indeed, they are the state sponsors of extremism and violence, and hence they would target military targets the way they have done, and they did not buy the deep divide that we had indicated in terms of our targeting. So yes, there is a very important domestic compulsion, but it's a compulsion primarily as far as the armed forces are concerned, because they had to regain credibility that they had lost.
No, fair point indeed. They have to regain credibility that they had lost. They had to be seen acting to assuage concerns for the domestic constituents. But before, let's just take this across to former Defence Secretary Yogi Narayan. And sir, the fact that India has categorically now said on record that we foiled plans of Pakistan's Air Force that was targeting India's military installations, the reality is that India is treating this as an act of aggression. And which is why the question is, does that make a retaliation imminent and inevitable?
You see, India has defined its policy during these operations as very clearly directed against terrorists and the terrorism centers of training. And that's why Indian Air Force only attacked the terrorist camp. And Pakistan found that they had nothing else, because we don't have any terrorist camps or training camps in India. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to retaliate. So they have started retaliating and trying to attack the military installations. And here I must say, they have failed, completely failed. And this incident of a MiG-21 shooting down an F-16 shows the high professionalism of the Indian Air Force and its pilots. And I must congratulate the pilots of the Indian Air Force for warding off this attack and also shooting down an F-16 plane. And I think Pakistan must now realize that it is not capable enough. It doesn't have enough in its armory to attack military installations of India, and they must take stock of the reality as it is today. And I would like to say here that I don't think India would like to escalate to a regular war. Right now, we are confining ourselves to attacking the terrorist camps, and I think we'll do so unless Pakistan escalates further and tries to once again attack our military installations. Then of course it's free for all, because then India will be free to attack their military installations, and this will definitely escalate. So right now, as I see it, Pakistan might not attempt another transgression into Indian territory or Indian airspace, and they must have realized by now that India is well equipped to fight them back and to counter any attack from the Pakistan side. So I think it would be highly foolish of Pakistan to launch a fresh attack on India.
Right. Fair point. Okay. Mr. Narayan, hold that thought there. I'm going to take two back-to-back questions with my colleague from the Economic Times, Manu Pabbi, and undoubtedly, the only journalist who's putting out credible information there and is getting his facts checked and right. And Manu, congratulations on some stellar journalism there. But I think the question that I need to ask you is, and you were present in that press briefing, what is the sense that you're getting? Are there chances of further military escalation from India, given that we've now said our military installations were the target of Pakistan Air Force? Have we exercised all our options, and is the only option now left to escalate matters? That's question number one, and let's get that out of the way before I ask you another question on the press briefing, which was rather brief today. Let's go ahead with question number one.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. See, it was an attack that India says was on its military installation. So you got the words right there. So it's already aggression from our side as we see it. It is not an attack on a civilian population. It's an attack on the military. So that will have to be retaliated. And, see the words we used when we did the strike into Pakistan. We termed it a non-military action because we targeted non-state actors. So now that we are saying that this was an attack on our military, there is, I think, no option but to escalate. And I would imagine already as we see air traffic over Pakistan has been suspended, a lot of our fighters and our air assets are on forward duties locations. I think we're doing a lot of flying on the border. I would imagine that retaliation would be coming from our side, and pretty soon. And the nature of this retaliation is something we have to look out for. As we know, as of now, this seems to be a battle of the air forces. It is something like two air forces coming face to face, in which we actually have a very huge numerical superiority. At the bigger end of the battle, at the larger end of escalation, ground forces could be engaged, but I would imagine that possibility to be low as of now, as of today, as of right now.
Okay, Manu, also a quick question. You were present at that briefing by the MEA, which was very short, was over in actually 2 minutes. In fact, I think in under 2 minutes, if I'm not wrong, without any questions taken. Traditionally, this has not been the case. So do you believe there is some sort of a back foot that we are on, or is it a function of the fact that, we don't want to divulge too much? Because without naming him, India did confirm, at least in the press conference, now of course he's been officially named and things have been said, that a pilot is missing in action. He was flying the MiG Bison. What does an Indian Air Force pilot in captivity of Pakistan mean in terms of ongoing tension? Manu.
See, what struck me about the press conference most importantly was that there was an Air Force officer present there. The Deputy Chief of Air Staff was there, sitting there. He didn't say a word, but his mere presence indicates that India has taken this seriously as a military, operation. So that was one thing that struck me about the press conference itself, which was actually a press statement only. In terms of the pilot being captured there, yes, it does put us on kind of a back foot, but not too much, because as I was speaking to some of my sources, my friends who are in the forces, senior officers, they say that, this is something that you cater for in an act of, when you do go in and do an operation on the Pakistani side, you would cater for, somebody being taken captive, being captured. They point out to older operations like in Kargil, when we had our pilots going down on the other side. At least in one case they were returned. That's the norm that is being followed. So even while hostilities were on, land forces were engaged. At the same time, the pilot did come back. So they see it as a part of the risk they took when they did the first operation itself. Does it put us in a back foot that we will not do any more military action? I don't think so. I don't think this will stop India from taking further military action if it so desires in, say, the airspace. I would not agree to that at all. This would be seen as something that is a part of war itself.
No, fair point indeed. Let me just quickly go across to Air Marshal V.K. Bhatia. And so one of the questions is that does the Air Force pilot in Pakistan's captivity, even though India has very categorically now told the Deputy Pakistan Envoy that Pakistan would be well advised to ensure that no harm comes to the Indian defense personnel in its custody. So it's now official. India has made it official that yes, our defense personnel is in Pakistan's custody. But the question really is, does him being in Pak custody make things a little more vulnerable for us, our position a little more vulnerable, considering he is now prisoner of war?
Not at all. These are things that has been mentioned earlier also, that this is part of the game. And when you are involved in a sort of quasi war situation, this sort of things would happen. But before I come to this in a little more detail, I would like to mention one thing, that India's objective was very clear. They were basically wanting to convey to Pakistan in a very strong message that they will not take terror attacks like the Pulwama anymore. And therefore it was a very calibrated action in terms of attacking only the terror camps across LOC into Pakistan. Now the question is, all this was done very successfully in a flawless mission. But knowing the other side, the leadership in Pakistan, whether it is the military leadership or the political leadership, it was quite obvious that Pakistan would indulge in something to save their face. And this is exactly what they did. But I must admit and say with great pride that the Indian side was absolutely ready for them. And they were actually able to intercept the intruding F-16s even before they could reach their targets, if they had any, as far as the military installations were concerned. But in an engagement like this, it is what we have seen, that the MiG-21 shot down a F-16, and in the bargain, one MiG-21 of the Indian Air Force was shot down. I would like to take you back to 1971, when the older MiG-21s had shot down starfighters of the Pakistani Air Force. And those aircraft now have been upgraded to Block 50 standards. Our MiG-21s have been upgraded to Bison standard, and that is where the skirmish took place. And as was brought out earlier, our MiG-21s, even though they are on the threshold of being phased out, they were able to take on the F-16s successfully, having shot down. If you actually weigh the scales, even in today's what happened, India would come out on top.
Right.
So,
absolutely, India will come out on top. But if I may go across to Ambassador I will come back to you, sir. Give me a minute. I'm going to come back to you in just a while. If I may go back to Ambassador Sibbal, and sir, in terms of sending out a message to Pakistan, India has advised Pakistan that our defense personnel in your captivity needs to be treated well. Strongly object to Pakistan's vulgar display of an injured personnel of the Indian Armed Forces. The kind of videos that are doing the rounds as far as Geneva Convention is concerned. But I want to understand purely from a diplomatic standpoint. I think a lot of our viewers, at least on social media and media, are asking these questions. What happens from here on? How do things proceed? There's a certain wing commander who's now been taken in Pakistan's captivity. India has acknowledged that he's in enemy terrain and in his captivity. What happens from here on? How do things follow? What are the steps that need to be taken to get him back? And just to remind our viewers, it happened at the time of the Kargil war as well. Kambapati Nachiket was taken, into captivity, and then of course he later made his way back successfully to India. But just to understand from you, how do things follow from here on? Ambassador Sibbal.
First of all, you described him as a prisoner of war. That is not strictly correct, because he's not a prisoner of war, because war has not been declared. And if a war had been declared, there would be an automatic break off of diplomatic relations. This is not the case. The embassies in the two countries are functioning. We called in the Deputy High Commissioner of Pakistan to make our démarche to him. Therefore, the sensible thing for Pakistan would be to return the pilot. But of course, if they did it immediately, it would be seen by the Pakistan military and the Pakistan public as a sign of weakness, that they have been intimidated by India and have hurriedly returned the pilot. They may not, I don't think they'll do so. They will do it in good time. They'll try to use him as a kind of a counter for bargaining. What kind of a counter that would be is difficult to say. But for Imran Khan to try and use the captured pilot as a bargain counter for starting a dialogue is neither here nor there, because the issue of a dialogue is related to Pakistan's credible action against terrorism. And the fact that they have not acknowledged that Balakot was a center for training, and that there were terrorists being, jaish-e-mohammed terrorists were located there, And before that, they haven't condemned the Pulwama attack. So on the issue of terrorism, their stance hasn't changed. And if that has not changed, there is no room for a dialogue with Pakistan. With regard to exhibiting him and breaching the conventions, Geneva Convention and others, Pakistan is capable of doing that. Look, even in the case of the Yadav, whom they captured, the manner in which they have extorted the maximum publicity from that against India in a very uncouth manner. So they are capable of doing that. But let me conclude by saying that, you know, our public opinion should realize that if you are engaged in a conflict with any country, especially Pakistan, it cannot be cost-free. And if we are going to start worrying about casualties or losses, then you can't fight a war. And we should look at the fact that our pilot has been captured as a casualty which was inevitable. But our resolve is there, and if Pakistan wants to escalate matters, India will be able to respond very strongly. But I don't think that Pakistan would want to escalate, because they really have no real options. Who are they going to attack? They can't come deep into Indian territory.
Right.
We've seen how even when they tried to cross the line of control, their F-16 was shot down. Insofar as the ground action is concerned, all right, artillery fire, this and that will go on. They'll attack our posts, we'll attack their posts. But this has been going on for years. There's nothing new there. But if they really escalate it in a very big way, in some manner, then yes, India can react, and justifiably so, because India has made it clear that it had no intention to target the Pakistan military.
Point.
And if they target our military, then the way is open for us,
we're not going to spare them either.
To retaliate, and the public will support the government in whatever government wishes to do.
Fair point. Manu, Pabi, would want to come to you, and I think because you spend a lot of your time in South Bloc and also North Bloc, it's only fair to ask you, while, you know, the deputy envoy was called and he was told that Pakistan will be ill-advised to not treat our, defense personnel with dignity, with respect and all of that. We've lodged a protest on how, you know, videos are being doing the rounds. But what is the thinking within the government? Are we expecting Pakistan to respect the Geneva Convention, given they may, because after all, this is, one of our defense personnel is in captivity, and many people also believe actually Imran Khan's own statement to offer dialogue and all of that is almost a bargaining tool of sorts. So what is the government's thinking on this at this point in time?
See, I think the impression is that the pilot should be treated fairly. He's been paraded practically before the media. There have been circulating videos showing him to be fine and healthy. So any action that Pakistan does which will harm him will certainly bring, a lot of international condemnation might against them. So we don't believe, I think, that the pilot would be harmed. But yes, to be used as a bargaining chip, that is quite likely. They would like to do that. And I think, but again, like the other panelists said, that pilot being in captivity would not, I would imagine, be seen as a limitation to India's options to retaliate. So I think in the mind of the government, it is a matter of concern. The efforts will be made to bring him back, but he will not be seen as a reason not to retaliate. Like in an act of conflict, there's a certain risk factor that you bargain into the picture, and unfortunately we have lost one pilot to the other side. But I don't think that's going to impact any further military action from our side. Of course, we will be approaching, we already approached them with the demarche saying that he should be returned. As the ambassador said, I believe they will hold on to him for a few more days till they see what kind of retaliation we are planning from across for today's action.
Right, fair point indeed. But before Mr. Sibal leaves, and I think he has to shortly, I'll take a quick follow-up with him, and then I'm going to carry on with the panel. And Mr. Sibal, in a statement, Imran Khan, the Pakistan's Prime Minister, has said that he understands India's grief over Pulwama. He again spoke of the need for a dialogue. Is this Pakistan's way of using a captive pilot as leverage, or does he actually fear further retaliation?
No, I don't think they're foolish enough to think that simply because there's a pilot in their custody, they can protect themselves against any Indian retaliation if they up the ante and try to attack our military installations again. I don't think so. You know, Imran Khan is in a very difficult position. Their sovereignty certainly has been violated by our military action. For us to say that it is a non-military action is a good line to take, but the fact is that we've used our Air Force to attack targets inside Pakistan. So it's a military action. It is a military action against terrorist targets in Pakistan, not against the Pakistan military, but yet it remains a military operation. And to that extent, it is a big slap in the face of the Pakistani military. And since they ruled the country, so they were bound to react, but their options were very limited. So they tried something on the line of control to save their face. That has come a cropper. Because their F-16s has been shot down by one of our low-end aircraft. They have gained something by way of being able to present to their public the Indian pilot they have captured, giving the impression as if their operation has been hugely successful and they have something to show for it. But this would be deluding themselves. They should see what the reality on the ground is. So I don't expect them to escalate. And from my side, in my own thinking, I don't think we need to, at this stage, go any further and see what Pakistan does. If they keep quiet, if they don't raise the ante, we have actually given them a powerful message. Now, if they continue in their old ways of fomenting terrorism against India and plan some other big attack, which could happen, then I think India is already in the logic of a very strong reaction, and there will be this very strong reaction. But finally, I'd like to say is that it is not in our interest to get distracted at this point in time, close to our elections, and therefore it is not our interest to escalate matters unilaterally. But of course, if we have no choice, then we have to defend our country and our interests.
No, and we must defend them with all our might. But very quickly, before I go any further, I do want to take a cue from what you just said and go across to Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed. And Ambassador Ahmed, is it, however, a little too optimistic to expect that things will stop at that? We invaded their airspace, we busted a terror camp, Pakistan now has done this, and they will perhaps be better advised not to, not to escalate it. Is it a little too optimistic to expect that things will stop here? Because a lot of people are concerned out there, and at least the constituents that we speak to, that is the subcontinent engulfed by the fog of war?
It is very difficult to predict how things will move forward. There has been a skirmish, we had initiated it, and there has been a limited response. Will this escalate? It's very difficult to predict that. Our own approach is that we have given a message, we had intended to give a message, and as far as we are concerned, we do not plan any further action. Now, will this be enough for Pakistan, what they have done today? Would they like to go forward and do something even more dramatic? Good sense would suggest that they will now call a halt. Their Prime Minister has spoken of dialogue and taking things forward in a more diplomatic manner. Will this satisfy the Pakistan Armed Forces? Difficult to predict at this point. We do not know. So I think we will have to watch the situation very carefully. I think the message from our side is very clear that we do not intend to continue this confrontation, and we do not wish to give it a military dimension. I think so long as we adhere to that position, there is no reason for Pakistan to escalate matters at this point.
Okay, fair point indeed. But if before I go any further, I want to take a quick question to Air Marshal Bhatia. And sir, I think we're given to understand that the service chiefs and the NSA had a very long meeting with the Prime Minister. Having served in the Defence Forces, what is the nature of these meetings like? And given that all the service chiefs were present, are we reading too much into, is India preparing to escalate? Is India preparing for a full-blown, armed confrontation?
won't think that way at all. But these meetings are being held to actually assess the situation. And as I mentioned earlier also, that Pakistan actually escalated the matter and went to the higher rung of the escalatory ladder by carrying out what they did today. But they have lost that round as well. And actually, if they want to go further in the ladder of escalation, then the ball is in their court. As far as India is concerned, they have given a very strong message to Pakistan, as also they have come out on top so far. And as far as India is concerned, I don't think they have any desire to escalate the matter any further. And I think it will be in the interest of Pakistan as well not to escalate the matter, because if they do, they will come cropper, because they don't have the capability to be able to confront India militarily at this moment. And as all of us know, that they are also going through very dire financial straits. And can they afford to have a war? Can they afford to escalate it further? I doubt it very much. As far as the pilot in captivity is concerned, I expect Pakistan to follow the Geneva Conventions and treat the pilot with all the dignity and honor that he deserves as a military man and as a warrior. To you, Priya.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Can I take a quick question on diplomacy, if my director permits me, because I think we can just take a break later. Okay, thank you very much for that. Mr. Narayan and Mr. Sibal, this is a question that I have for the two of you. And as far as the diplomatic front is concerned, I don't know if there is a lot to be proud about here, but Mr. Narayan, a quick question to you in terms of the U.S. Secretary of, the U.S. Secretary Mike Pompeo saying that he has spoken both to Sushma Swaraj and SM Qureshi. He has urged both sides to establish direct contact and avoid escalation in the current tension, but he's also advised Pakistan on the urgency of taking meaningful action against terrorist groups. Do you see this as big advantage India, Mr. Narayan?
This as a big advantage for India, because if US as one of the two top countries of the world, two top military nations of the world, one has said this to Pakistan, it's a big victory for us. It's a big diplomatic victory, because if we've got USA on our side and they are condemning Pakistan on these sponsoring terrorism, I think it's a big boost for us. Here I must also add that when we went in for the terrorist strikes, our objective was to convey this message to Pakistan that, look, if you play with your extended arm called the terrorists, and where you fully support these terrorists, then we are going to retaliate. I think that was the objective of our Indian Air Force going across the border. So that message has gone to Pakistan, and I have a feeling that together with this, the diplomacy and the relations and the meetings we are having with the various countries and their national heads, I think that will also pressurize Pakistan in now scaling down the operations. I don't see any confrontation or going up to a war. I see it that India wanted to convey its message, Pakistan wanted to show it to its public that it is going to retaliate whenever India crosses the border or comes into the Pakistan airspace. I think both the objectives of both the sides have been achieved, and I don't think either side would like to escalate. But if Pakistan does escalate by having more attacks on our military installations, I would expect the Indian forces to fully react and go into active mode further than what they've already done.
Fair point.
And I'm sure Pakistan realizes this,
right,
and will never go into that escalation.
Okay, very quickly,
Back to
sir,
you,
if I may take another diplomatic question, and on diplomacy, sorry, yes. If I may take this question to Mr. Sibbal, and Mr. Sibbal, the Russia, China, India, tolerate have spoken strongly against terror. The Gulf countries, condemned Pulwama. EU, France and Australia have spoken in our favor. In some sense, is the world with India, or are we jumping the gun and patting ourselves on the back too soon?
I think the world is with us on the issue of terrorism, but the world is also concerned at the prospect of a nuclear war between India and Pakistan, because if you see what the other countries have been saying officially and unofficially, that if there is one place in the world where nuclear war can take place, it is South Asia, because of the Kashmir issue, etc., etc. So if we go up the escalatory ladder, so these concerns will be heightened, and therefore there will be statements and efforts to try and calm down the situation, ask for de-escalation, ask for dialogue. But the point is, if we are going to reach that situation, it will be because of Pakistan's adventurism. And I am very doubtful if Pakistan today has the capability or the will to go up that escalation ladder. So I don't think we will come to a situation where the world will begin to be seriously worried about we entering into a phase of our confrontation which could lead to the brandishing of nuclear threat. So the pressure will be on Pakistan not to escalate. Sympathy will be with India on the issue of terrorism. But, as in all these things, and there's a long history to this, countries will always advise caution and restraint and dialogue. We should not be overly concerned about these things. Powerful countries do what they have to do. United States does exactly what it wants. China does exactly what it wants. And so did Russia in Ukraine and in Georgia when their interests were affected. So while on the diplomatic front, our efforts should be to try and win diplomatic support, but we should not see this as a very critical point. Ultimately, it's a question of our own strength, unity in the country, our will to protect ourselves, and our self-confidence in doing so. And if we feel that we have all this, then we should just go ahead and do what we have to do. And I can tell you that India is not positioned in such a way that the countries, unlike in the past, will pay far more attention to India's case and India's interests than they have done in the past, because India is being recognized today as a rising global power, and they have vested interests in having good relations with India, which is why, as you said, Australia and the EU and other countries, and even in the Russia-India-China dialogue, hosted by China, China has been careful.
That's
because
right.
it also looks at its future relations with India. This does not mean that it has become friendly towards us. But you can see how the dynamic is developing despite their all-weather friendship with Pakistan, which is the lips and teeth and oceans and mountains and whatever they say. They have not been able to take a strong position in this trilateral dialogue in favor of Pakistan.
No, absolutely. But Ambassador Ahmad, a quick word on China, considering we are talking about them. Surprisingly, China has maintained a very neutral stance, asking Pakistan to dismantle terror havens. What has happened there? I mean, are they very conscious of our, rising stock as far as the global community is concerned? Have they had a change of heart? Because they are Pakistan's all-weather allies.
Has it has a very special concern about extremists at its border. They are concerned about Pakistan as well as Afghanistan. And this is a very real concern because it penetrates their own community at this, in this region. This is the Uyghur community. Large sections of China's Uyghur community have joined jihadi groups in the past, earlier Al-Qaeda and later on the Islamic State. So yes, China has a very deep concern about extremism. At the same time, it has been working with Pakistan as a strategic partner, but it has also been concerned that the development activity that it finances in Pakistan would ensure that the allure of extremism would be reduced to a considerable extent. That is what they have been saying publicly, and I don't see why we should disagree with that. So where we are concerned, we should recognize the fact that China has legitimate concerns about the rise of extremism at its borders and its proliferation across the region, and the blowback that China might experience in the near future. I think we should work on that aspect as far as China is concerned, rather than imagine that it is completely with Pakistan on all issues. It is not. It has concerns about extremists, and we should play on that.
Okay. Indeed, we should. Neerja Chaudhary is also joining us right here on the India Development Debate. And Neerja, Donald Trump, the US President, is likely to make calls both to our Prime Minister and to Imran Khan in Pakistan. At what stage do you see a larger involvement of the US? I know Mr. Pompeo made that statement about de-escalation and urging Pakistan to crack down on, terror camps. But at what point do you believe America is going to get involved? And like I think Ambassador Sibbal has said, and like Ambassador Ahmed said, they've got vested interests here. The world does. India is a huge investment destination. A lot of the corporates have huge exposure here. Can the subcontinent afford an altercation of the kind that we are staring at? At what stage do you believe US is going to get far more involved to de-escalate tension?
I think already there must be a lot of pressure coming from the international community and worry on this count, that nobody wants escalation of tension between the two countries. We are already underway with several things. We made a strike. They have countered with certain things today, certain actions. And we have said we don't want escalation. Imran Khan says that we want dialogue, and once there is escalation, it will be out of the hands of either Mr. Narendra Modi or myself. And we are willing for dialogue on terrorism. And therefore, I think that the behind the scenes talks are probably going on already. And it's very interesting that the airspace north of Delhi was closed. That announcement was made in the morning today, meaning and all the flights northwards going to Punjab, J&K, Himachal were not going to take place in the next 3 months, which is a very serious decision, which showed there may be escalation, but very quickly, a couple of hours after that, they withdrew that order, which showed something is going on behind the scenes in terms of de-escalation. Now, the central thing for India is what? Why is it that the country felt happy yesterday, that we've been sitting ducks and this proxy war has been going on, the terrorists in Pakistan taking pot shots at India again and again. So somewhere Pakistan's we're willing to talk on terrorism. They have to walk the talk for Indians to be satisfied that that is going to be the case. And France is going to move,
Right.
against, at the UNSC, Security Council against, for Masood Azhar to be declared a global terrorist. And I think somewhere Pakistan has to show concretely a move in that direction, that it is serious about acting against terrorists on its soil who move against India. So I think all this will have to be taken into consideration when the world capitals move in to de-escalate.
Oh yes, absolutely. Neerja, very quickly, if I may take a political follow-up with you and then close the discussion with the rest of the guests. Opposition has raised concerns over security situation. They have damned Pakistan for, invading the airspace and all of that, but have complained that the Prime Minister has still not called for an all-party meeting, and they have warned against politicization of the security situation right now. Is that a genuine grouse? And do you see some of that happening?
I think the opposition would be naturally worried. So, in the run-up to the general elections, just before the general election, that Mr. Modi using Pulwama and the nationalistic fervor all over the country, and that anti-Pak feeling, he would hijack the narrative which may become the main theme of the 2019 elections. So they have, today made a statement, 21 parties, criticizing the politicization of Pulwama while giving their complete support to the armed forces, to the Air Force, and condemning Pakistan. Now, the opposition would have been really on the defensive, on the back foot, had they not done something when they have done it and expressed their concern about the politicization part of it.
Okay, no, fair point indeed. And, politicization, some amount of hyperventilation, some amount of hyper-nationalism, perhaps is the chest thumping is best advised to be avoided at this stage. These are sensitive times. But two quick last questions, and let me get the two diplomats on this one. Ambassador Ahmed, is this also becoming a competing narrative scenario, the propaganda conflict, so to say, with each side claiming success? The lack of information, of course, is making things susceptible also. But do we run the risk of this becoming, and when Kargil happened or when previous wars have happened, we did not have such infiltration of social media. News was not flowing at such a quick pace. There was more, I think the poor government could manage channels and sources of information alone. That has changed a lot. Do you believe this could end up becoming a competing narrative scenario?
I think that we are managing the information flow extremely well. I think the people are aware of what has happened. They are aware of the intentions of our government. They know that we were concerned about a limited operation without escalation. What our operation has succeeded in doing is to break one particular bogey, and that was that we cannot retaliate against terrorism because of the nuclear concern, the nuclear threat. I think the fact that we carried out a limited but very effective operation against terrorism and only against terrorism has given a very important message in Pakistan. I think this will be heard by the people of Pakistan, that their country is now completely a quagmire of extremism and terror that has hurt their own nation, and that their civilian government that is elected by the people exercises no authority whatsoever over crucial areas of national endeavor and national development. I think this has been the main message that has come because of the,
Fair point.
Because of the action that we have taken now.
Okay. A quick last word, and Mr. Sibal, I will get you to come in on that, Ambassador Sibal. There is fear that we are on an escalatory path, and which is why I will ask you a very direct question. When do we see diplomats take command and start opening the phone lines that they were? And where does the onus for further escalation or de-escalation now rest? Where does the ball really lie right now?
Look, all this while, all these years, we've not used our military power against Pakistan. We've been forced to use it at particular moments because of Pakistani aggression. So diplomacy has always been at work. Politics has always been at work. We have repeatedly given Pakistan ample opportunity to deal with the issue of terrorism. Even after the Mumbai attack, we didn't take military action. Within 8 months, we began the dialogue with Pakistan once again. But Pakistan has constantly goaded us with their terrorist attacks, whether it is Pathankot or Uri or Nagarkot or what have you. There again, we have been very restrained in using military force against Pakistan. It is because of the Pulwama attack, and once again, such heavy casualties inflicted on us by jaish-e-mohammed, who is being protected by Pakistan and China together. They refuse to let him be designated as an international terrorist, which was a political and diplomatic way of addressing the issue. Even that they don't want to. And therefore, they compelled us to take the military action that we did. And we took it in a very calibrated manner, in a very cautious manner, where we didn't want to enlarge the area of conflict and yet send a very powerful message to Pakistan. So the onus is not on us to de-escalate. The onus is entirely on Pakistan to de-escalate, because they are the party who've been engaged in serious terrorist attacks against India, supported by their military and intelligence establishment, and they have to draw back from this. And there cannot be a dialogue, as Imran Khan is proposing, unless they take credible, verifiable action against jaish-e-mohammed and Hafiz Saeed, and try those who were responsible for the Mumbai attack and what happened in Pathankot. They've done nothing of the kind. So talking of dialogue is talking in the air. They can't force us to enter into a dialogue simply because they have captured a pilot of ours. So I don't think that that we are on the back foot at all on this. Pakistan is on the back foot. They have been exposed, and pressure will be on them. Their options are very limited, and I think we have done rather well. We don't need to escalate matters at this stage, unless, of course, Pakistan is foolish enough to do something which they ought not to do, and then we will be forced to react. That's all. And as I said, we don't have to worry too much about international public opinion. If you are strong, the public opinion will be behind you. The international public opinion will be behind you.
Will gather around you. No, absolutely. On that note, completely out of time here, Ambassador Kanwal Sibbal, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, Mr. Yogendra Narayan, Air Marshal V.K. Bhatia, Manu Pabbi, and of course Nirja Chaudhary. Thank you very, very much for sparing time and being with us. It is important to let voices of sanity prevail. It's important to have discussions with dignity. It's important to put solutions to the table. Nobody likes a war. A war leaves us and leads us nowhere. Peace must prevail, but if you are going to attack us, and if you are going to take pot shots at us, and if you are going to let terror, which is going to eventually cause casualty on our soil, breed on yours, we are no longer prepared to look away. But yes, temper should be cooled down, things should de-escalate. One hopes that Pakistan will be knocked with some sense, and one hopes that the channels of communication, as far as the Indian diplomacy is concerned, is going to gather pace as well. Thank you very much for being with us in this edition of the India Development Debate. We take a quick breather. There's plenty more that's coming up on the other side.